That's my best Godzilla impression. So the 2014 version of Godzilla is directed by Gareth Edwards, written by Max Borenstein, and stars Aaron Taylor Johnson, Elizabeth Olsen, Ken Watanabe, and Bryan Cranston. And Godzilla is pretty much about, giant monsters waking up and terrorizing the earth, and humans are trying to figure out how to deal with this stuff. Bryan Cranston is a scientist who knows that Japanese government, those who were involved with these monsters, are trying to cover them up as natural disasters. Aaron Taylor Johnson plays his son, who is pretty much like a soldier type. He defuses bombs and stuff. Elizabeth Olsen is his wife, who is a nurse, and Ken Watanabe is a guy who has been involved with this whole Godzilla thing, and kind of just wants them to, fight to let nature resolve itself. And that's really all I have to say about Godzilla. It's not necessarily that it's thin on plot, but because it really does speak for itself, and I don't want to give anything away. And of course, this is the second attempt to make an Americanized sort of version of Godzilla after the one from the 90s, which people would prefer to not remember. And this movie has a lot of stuff riding on it because, Godzilla's been around for how many years now, and he's always been a franchise kind of, character. And if this movie does well, we could have an American franchise. And in my opinion, Godzilla is the very definition of a summer blockbuster. I do think it has quite a few problems with it, but it's the kind of movie that you watch just to really have fun with and just to be in awe of it. And, if you're into that kind of stuff, you will love Godzilla. Now, of course, since we're in 2014, we don't have people in suits anymore, fighting amongst miniature buildings. Now, we really have the tech to render Godzilla as this gigantic monstrosity. We've got a gigantic monsters here, and what the VFX here lack in, I'd say, variety. Like we don't really get to see that many models of these creatures. What they lack for that, they make up for with extreme scale. Like these monsters are gigantic. Like every time they're on screen, it's just you cannot believe how big they are. And what's great about the visual effects, not just with the monsters, but with the scenes of destruction, is that through the scenes of destruction, you get a sense of how big and terrifying these monsters are. And I thought that was a great use of it because there's a lot of scenes where you just see, the trail of dead they've left behind, not necessarily the monsters themselves. Seriously though, I just really have to emphasize that Godzilla here is gigantic. He is. In fact, to further support that idea, in terms of like cinematography and framing and stuff, it almost feels like nothing ever fits into frame. You only see like certain parts of the body and stuff, and I think that's great. This movie does a lot of hiding and teasing, like it doesn't want to show you everything, and that actually adds to the effect. And some of the best shots in this movie have to do with like cool stuff they do with lighting and smoke and stuff. Like I won't spoil it, but there's a certain shot of Godzilla where there's lots of smoke and it's just lightning and stuff, and it's just a beauty to behold. If seeing Godzilla alone was not enough for you, like you get to see him in like almost like he's entering a wrestling ring. And again, like many other big blockbuster movies like this, good visuals usually come hand in hand with good sound. And what I loved about Godzilla here was that it built tension up through both sound and silence. Like it knew when to use both of those things. There's certain sequences that really just have lots of sound going on, and you can tell that it's just terrifying to be in that situation. But there are other scenes also that are just completely dead silent, and you are dreading, what's happening. I also just have to mention that, in terms of like sound and everything, like the sound Godzilla makes when he roars, that I failed to imitate in the intro, it's fantastic. Like the first time he roars on screen, like you're just okay, that's Godzilla. And the score by Alexandre Desplat, I never know how to pronounce his name. It really is great. Like it keeps things chugging along. It's very ominous. It's very dark, but it never feels overbearing. It really does chug the movie along, and that's great. And like I mentioned a while ago, this movie is not short in plot at all. And in fact, I like how the plot is really focused on just this one mission they have to do, because this movie really is just on one track the entire time. No, little side stories and stuff. Like everything is really about hunting down these monsters, figuring out what to do with them, and keeps you engaged. In terms of acting, this movie has tons of star power, and I think everyone does a fine job. Although the only person who really stands out to me is definitely Bryan Cranston. And I'm not just saying this because he is my favorite actor of all time. I've just decided he really had like the best character here, and he, like whenever he was on screen, he was a force to be reckoned with. Cranston really has a talent of just bringing in so many layers to whatever character he's playing, and here you can really tell he has this force of just driving him. And I really have to give Gareth Edwards, the director, huge props for directing this movie because he captures scale so well. Like that's something he is so good at. So many scenes are directed from the point of view of like humans on the street and stuff, and I really appreciated that. Only very few times we get full aerial shots of things happening. Like I really appreciated like just the scenes of where a foot comes down in front of someone. And of course, he directs tense parts really great. Like you really feel the tension, and he has an obvious respect for the material. Like he's not trying to turn it into the Lost World Jurassic Park like happened in the 90s. No, here he really recognizes that Godzilla is a character on his own and that he affects all these people just trying to figure out what's happening. But like I said, even if I did enjoy Godzilla a lot, objectively speaking, like very strictly speaking, I will admit that there's a lot of things that I didn't really agree with. For one, again, this movie does a lot of teasing. It reveals certain things like very bit by bit, and I'm fine with that. It's just that some things that were teased, I didn't think were teased very well. Because for me, if you're gonna tease something, like really just show the like tiny part of it and just keep building up. But it didn't really do that. It built up to a certain point, and then it just kind of feels like the movie cuts, and it doesn't feel like teasing anymore. It feels like Gareth Edwards is withholding, he's showing something cool to the audience. Like I don't know, it just felt way too abrupt to me. One of my biggest problems with this movie, though, is that the rest of the human characters, aside from Bryan Cranston's character, they're completely weak, honestly. And like, you might make the argument that this is a Godzilla movie, like we're here to see Godzilla, but the movie makes it very clear from early on that this is a movie not necessarily about Godzilla. Really, it's a movie about people reacting to this whole Godzilla thing, and the human aspect is like takes up a lot of the screen time. But unfortunately, a lot of these characters really are just kind of cliched. They just really are plot devices. I also was kind of disappointed that this movie didn't dip into the themes that it was setting up that much. There's talk about government secrets and stuff, how they're trying to cover up the whole monster thing, and they talk about that a bit, but I kind of wish they went deeper with it. And there also talks about how the arrogance of man, as Ken Watanabe's character says in the movie, the arrogance of man is thinking that they are in control of nature when in fact it's the other way around. Again, they touch on that. It's just that they don't really go anywhere with it. And also Godzilla himself. Now, I hate to be the guy who says, oh, there wasn't enough Godzilla in Godzilla, but I really didn't think there wasn't, and I kind of wish they, focused on him a bit more. When he shows up, he kind of feels like Deus Ex Machina. But anyway, despite those things, no matter how much I talk about them, like I cannot deny like how impressed I was by Godzilla. It's still a pretty good movie in terms of like objective reasoning. One thing that you have to tell people is do not expect Pacific Rim because a lot of comparisons are going to be made. And Pacific Rim is the kind of movie that you watch. It is mindless entertainment. Godzilla is not mindless entertainment. However, they do certain things that are mindless, and I really wish they didn't do that. However, I really really want a franchise out of this, and I know the human characters here were weak, but it can kind of be like what Planet of the Apes is doing. Like every new movie you have new human characters and stuff, and hopefully they can flesh out the characters a bit more later on. Anyway, that is my review of Godzilla. Have you guys seen it? What do you think about it? Whether you loved it or you hated it? Whatever you thought, whether you agree with me or not, please leave me a comment and let's have a conversation.